Title: The Little Girl and the Silent Ghost, a gentle English story for learners. Welcome to today's long English story. This story is called The Little Girl and the Silent Ghost. It is a special graded reader, written in clear and slow English, perfect for learners at the intermediate and upper intermediate level. You can listen and read along to improve your English vocabulary, comprehension, and emotional expression. Relax, and listen carefully. Now, let's begin. It was a quiet morning in the small town of Willowbrook. The town was peaceful, with narrow streets, old shops, and friendly neighbors. But at the very edge of the town, on top of a small hill, there stood a house. The house was old. Its windows were dusty, and the paint on the walls had faded. Tall grass grew around the garden, and the gate made a loud sound whenever the wind pushed it. People in Willowbrook often whispered about this house. Some said it was empty. Some said it was haunted. But nobody came close. In this town lived a little girl named Sophie. Sophie was 9 years old. She had bright brown eyes, curly hair, and a curious heart. She loved to ask questions and to explore new places. Sophie lived with her mother, father, and her older brother, Daniel. Her family was kind and supportive, but they were often busy. Her father worked at a bookstore. Her mother taught music at the local school. Her brother, Daniel, was 12 and always busy with his friends or his homework. Sophie sometimes felt lonely. She wanted an adventure. She wanted something magical to happen in her life. One sunny afternoon, Sophie walked past the old hill with her friend, Sarah. Sarah pointed at the house and whispered, "Sophie, do you see that? That house is haunted. My grandmother told me. A ghost lives there." Sophie stopped and looked. The house was large and silent. The wind moved the branches of the old trees. It looked mysterious, not scary. "A ghost?" Sophie asked softly. Her eyes grew wide with curiosity. "Do you think it's real?" Sarah shook her head quickly. "I don't know, but I would never go inside. People say strange sounds come from there at night." Sophie smiled a little. She wasn't sure if she believed the story. But something inside her whispered, "I want to see it for myself." That night, Sophie sat at the window of her bedroom. The moonlight shone on the hill. The old house stood quietly under the silver light. She felt something pulling her toward it. She whispered to herself, "Maybe the ghost is not scary. Maybe it's just lonely." Her cat, Whiskers, jumped onto her lap. Sophie stroked its soft fur and thought about the house. "Would you go with me, Whiskers?" she asked playfully. The cat purred, as if saying yes. The next day was Saturday. Her parents were busy cleaning the house. Daniel was playing video games in his room. Sophie felt bored. She wanted something exciting. So she made a plan. She put some biscuits in a small bag. She took a flashlight, even though it was daytime. She also carried her favorite notebook, in case she wanted to write something. "Where are you going, Sophie?" her mother asked. Sophie smiled quickly. "Just to the hill with Whiskers. I'll be back soon." Her mother nodded, not asking more. Sophie walked slowly toward the old house. Her heart beat faster with every step. The gate creaked loudly when Sophie pushed it. The garden was full of tall grass and wildflowers. She stepped carefully, her cat following her like a little shadow. The front door was half open. It looked like nobody had touched it for years. Sophie hesitated. She looked back. The town seemed far away, though it was only a short walk. The house was quiet, waiting. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door gently and stepped inside. The hallway was dark and cool. Dust floated in the air. The wooden floor made a soft sound under her shoes. She whispered, "Hello? Is anyone here?" No answer. The silence was heavy, but Sophie was not afraid. Instead, she felt curious. She walked from room to room. There was an old dining table covered in dust. A broken chair stood near the fireplace. A mirror on the wall reflected her small face. Sophie smiled at her reflection. Looks like nobody has lived here for a long time, she said softly. Then, suddenly, she heard something. It was very faint. Like a whisper. Like someone breathing slowly. Sophie froze. Her cat's ears moved. Whiskers stared at the staircase leading to the upper floor. Sophie's heart beat faster. She took one step closer. The sound continued, gentle, slow, almost like a sigh. Hello? Sophie asked again. Her voice trembled a little this time. No reply. But the sound didn't stop. Sophie gathered her courage and started climbing the stairs. Each step made a creak. The whispering sound grew clearer. At the top, she saw a long hallway with many doors. The sound came from the last room at the end. Sophie walked carefully. Her flashlight trembled in her small hands. She reached the last door and pushed it open. The room was empty, except for a tall window with broken curtains. The light of the afternoon sun filled the room. And there, near the window, stood a shadow. It was not strong or dark. It was soft, almost like smoke. A figure, shaped like a person. Sophie gasped but didn't run. She whispered, "Are you, the ghost?" The shadow didn't speak. But Sophie felt something, an emotion. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It felt like sadness. The ghost stood silently, looking at her with invisible eyes. Sophie held her breath. Then, with a small voice, she said, "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you." The shadow moved slightly. It was still silent, but its shape softened. Sophie felt a strange connection, as if the ghost understood her words. At that moment, Sophie made a decision. She didn't want to run away. She wanted to know the story of this ghost. Why was it here? Why was it so sad? And maybe, just maybe, she could help. Sophie stood very still in the dusty room. The shadowy figure near the window did not move, but it also did not disappear. It seemed to wait for her, as if her presence mattered. Whiskers, her cat, stayed close to her feet. His tail was puffed up, but he did not hiss or run. This gave Sophie courage. She whispered softly, "Hello. My name is Sophie. I don't want to hurt you." The shadow swayed a little, like smoke touched by the wind. It did not answer, but Sophie felt something deep inside her heart. It was a strange, heavy feeling, like loneliness and sadness together. Sophie slowly stepped closer. Her shoes made a light sound on the old wooden floor. The air felt colder as she moved toward the figure. "You don't have to be afraid," she said gently. "I'm just a little girl. I'm not dangerous." The ghost shape trembled softly. For a moment, Sophie thought it would vanish. But then it became clearer. She could almost see the outline of a person. It looked like a young woman, tall and thin, with long hair falling over her shoulders. Her face was pale and blurred, like a painting with water spilled on it, but Sophie could feel her eyes, even though they were not clear. They were full of sadness. Sophie whispered, "You look so lonely." The ghost tilted her head, almost like she was listening. Sophie felt her heart beating fast. She wanted to help. She didn't know how, but she wanted to. "Maybe you can't talk," Sophie said carefully. "That's okay. You don't need to speak. But if you stay here alone forever, you'll always be sad. I don't want that for you." The ghost moved a little closer. The air around Sophie grew cold, but it was not frightening. It felt like a winter breeze, gentle, yet full of longing. Whiskers meowed softly, as if greeting the ghost. Sophie smiled. "See? Even Whiskers likes you. Maybe we can be friends." The ghost did not reply, but the shadow of her body softened again. It seemed like a silent promise, she wanted to listen. Suddenly, Sophie heard a sound downstairs. The old floorboards creaked. Her heart jumped. Was someone else in the house? She turned quickly toward the door. The ghost faded, growing thinner, like smoke disappearing in the air. In seconds, the room was empty again. No. Wait. Sophie whispered, reaching her hand out. But the ghost was gone. Whiskers meowed again and ran to the door. Sophie followed quickly. She walked down the hallway and back to the stairs. The sound had stopped. Everything was silent again. Maybe it was just the wind. Or maybe the old house liked to play tricks. Still, Sophie felt disappointed. She had finally met the ghost, and now it had vanished. When Sophie returned home, her mother was setting the table for lunch. Her father was reading a newspaper. Daniel sat with his phone, playing a game. "Where have you been?" her mother asked kindly. "Just walking near the hill," Sophie said. Her voice was calm, but inside her heart was racing. Nobody asked more. They did not notice her excitement or her nervousness. At night, Sophie lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the ghost's sad eyes. She thought about how the air had grown cold around her. She thought about how the ghost had almost trusted her. "I'll go back tomorrow," she whispered to herself. "I'll try again. I'll help her. I know she needs me." Whiskers purred beside her, as if agreeing. The next day, Sophie returned to the old house. This time, she brought a small gift. It was a music box her mother had given her when she was little. When opened, the box played a soft tune that sounded like a lullaby. Sophie thought, maybe the ghost will like music. The house was just as silent as before. The garden was wild, the windows dusty, the door still half open. Sophie stepped inside carefully. Her flashlight lit the way, even though the afternoon sun gave some light through the windows. "Hello," she called softly. "It's me again." "Sophie." She climbed the stairs, her heart pounding with hope. At the top, she walked to the same room at the end of the hallway. The air grew colder. Sophie smiled. She knew the ghost was near. Sophie placed the music box on the windowsill. She opened it slowly. The gentle tune filled the empty room. A soft movement appeared near the window. The shadow formed again, slowly taking the shape of the ghostly woman. Sophie whispered, "See? This is for you. Isn't it beautiful?" The ghost stood still, but Sophie felt the sadness in the room change. It was softer now, mixed with something like longing and memory. "Do you remember music?" Sophie asked. "Did you used to sing? Or dance? Or maybe someone gave you music as a gift?" The ghost tilted her head again. Her blurred face seemed to soften. She moved closer to the music box, as if listening carefully. Sophie smiled warmly. "You don't have to be alone. I can visit you. I can keep you company." The ghost flickered, like candlelight in the wind. She reached out one faint, smoky hand toward the box. Though she could not touch it, Sophie felt she wanted to. Then something strange happened. The music slowed, though the box was still turning. The air became colder. The ghost's form grew darker, and her eyes, though still blurry, looked heavier with sorrow. Sophie felt a chill run down her spine. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "Does the music make you sad?" The ghost bowed her head. Her shadowy shoulders trembled, as if she was crying without sound. Sophie's heart ached. She stepped forward, close to the ghost. "It's okay," Sophie said softly. "You can cry. You can be sad. But please, don't hide. I'm here." The ghost lifted her head again. For just one moment, Sophie saw something. Not just a shadow, but a pale face. A woman, with gentle features, eyes full of tears, and lips that trembled like she wanted to speak. But no sound came. Her mouth moved, but only silence filled the air. The image faded quickly, and the ghost returned to a shapeless shadow. She drifted back toward the window, standing still again. Sophie pressed her hand to her chest. Her heart was racing. She knew the ghost had tried to say something. "What happened to you?" Sophie asked softly. "Why can't you speak? Why are you here?" No answer. Only silence. But Sophie was not discouraged. She felt even more determined. "I'll find out," she whispered. "I'll learn your story. And I'll help you." The ghost shimmered faintly, almost like a nod. Sophie closed the music box and picked it up again. She didn't want to leave it behind, in case someone stole it. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. "You're not alone anymore." The ghost remained silent by the window, watching. Her shadowy form seemed calmer now, less heavy than before. Sophie left the room, walked down the stairs, and stepped into the sunlight again. Whiskers followed closely behind. The air outside felt warmer, fresher. But Sophie's heart carried the weight of the ghost's sadness. She whispered to herself as she walked home, "She's not scary. She's just broken. I'll help her find her voice." At home, Sophie wrote in her notebook. She made a list. The ghost is a woman. She is very sad. She cannot speak. She might be lonely. She reacted to music. She almost showed me her real face. Sophie underlined the last point. She felt proud. She had made progress. But questions filled her mind. Who was the woman? Why was she trapped in that house? What story hid behind her sadness? Sophie fell asleep with her notebook on her desk, her cat curled up beside her. In her dreams, she saw the ghost again, standing by the window, silent, with eyes that begged for help. The next morning, Sophie woke with a strong feeling in her chest. It was not fear. It was determination. She sat up in bed, stretched her arms, and looked at Whiskers, who was curled at her feet. The cat blinked slowly, as if agreeing with her thoughts. Sophie whispered, "Today, we're going to learn her story." At the breakfast table, Sophie's mother placed a plate of warm toast in front of her. Her father sipped his tea, and Daniel was busy with his phone, barely looking up. Sophie asked casually, "Mom, do you know anything about the old house on the hill?" Her mother raised her eyebrows. "The Hill House? Why do you ask?" Sophie shrugged. "I just saw it yesterday when I was walking. It looks interesting." Her father lowered his newspaper. "That place has been empty for many years. Nobody wants to live there." "Why not?" Sophie asked, pretending to be curious but not too curious. Her father looked thoughtful. "There are many stories. Some say a family used to live there, but something sad happened." "What kind of sad?" Sophie asked quickly. Her father shook his head. "I don't know the details. Maybe ask Mrs. Willow. She's the librarian. She knows about the history of this town." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Good idea. I'll go to the library after school tomorrow." The day at school felt long and heavy. Math problems, reading lessons, and playground games filled her hours. But Sophie's mind kept drifting back to the ghost. During lunch, her friend Sarah asked, "Why are you so quiet today?" Sophie hesitated. Should she tell Sarah the truth? That she had actually seen the ghost? No. Sarah would be too scared. She might even tell other kids, and they would laugh at Sophie. So Sophie smiled and said, "Just thinking about a story I want to write in my notebook." Sarah nodded and went back to her sandwich. Sophie felt relieved. The secret was hers to keep, for now. The next afternoon, Sophie walked to the town library. It was a small but cozy building with tall shelves, wooden tables, and the warm smell of old books. Mrs. Willow, the librarian, was at her desk, wearing her round glasses and a gentle smile. "Good afternoon, Sophie," she said. "Looking for a new book today?" "Yes," Sophie said, trying to sound casual. "Do you have any books about the old houses in Willowbrook?" Mrs. Willow tilted her head. "The old houses? Ah, you mean the Hill House?" Sophie's heart jumped. "Yes. That one." Mrs. Willow looked thoughtful. "Not many children ask about it. But yes, there are some records. It used to belong to the Hartwell family many years ago." "The Hartwell family?" Sophie repeated, curious. Mrs. Willow nodded. They were respected people. The father was a lawyer. The mother loved music, she played the piano beautifully. And they had a daughter. Sophie's eyes widened. A daughter? Yes. A young woman named Eliza Hartwell. She was kind and gentle. Many people admired her. Sophie leaned closer. What happened to her? Mrs. Willow sighed. Well, some say she died very young. In that very house. Others say she disappeared. Disappeared? Sophie whispered. Mrs. Willow nodded slowly. No one really knows the truth. But after her death, or disappearance, the family moved away. The house was left empty. Some say her spirit remained. Sophie felt her heart beat faster. Eliza Hartwell. Was that the ghost's name? Mrs. Willow led Sophie to a corner shelf filled with local history books. She pulled out a large, dusty volume. This book has some information about the Hartwells. Maybe you'll find it interesting. Sophie opened it carefully. The pages were yellow and smelled old. There was a picture, a black and white photograph of a young woman with long hair, wearing a simple dress. Her face was gentle, her eyes thoughtful. Under the picture, the name read, Eliza Hartwell, 1887 to 1905. Sophie gasped quietly. That's her, she whispered. She looks just like the ghost. Mrs. Willow didn't hear. She was busy sorting other books. Sophie kept reading. The text said, Eliza Hartwell was known for her love of music. She often played the piano in the evenings, and her soft songs could be heard across the hill. She was said to have a kind heart, though she suffered from weak health. Some say she died of illness at a young age. Others say she had secrets that were never discovered. Sophie's fingers traced the words. Secrets. That must be why the ghost was so sad. The next day, Sophie carried the history book in her bag. She wanted to show it to the ghost. When she entered the old house again, she whispered, Hello, Eliza. Is that your name, Eliza Hartwell? The air grew colder. The shadow formed near the window. Yes, it was her. Sophie carefully opened the book to the photograph. She held it up. Is this you? The ghost's shape trembled. She drifted closer, and though her blurred face was unreadable, Sophie felt the emotion. It was strong, like recognition, like pain, like a memory that hurt too much. Yes, Sophie whispered. I know now. You are Eliza. The ghost shimmered, her shadowy form becoming clearer for a few seconds. Her hands reached out, trembling, toward the picture. But she still could not touch it. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. You're not forgotten, Eliza. I'll remember you. I'll tell your story. Suddenly, the ghost's mouth opened again. Her lips moved silently, struggling. Sophie leaned forward. What is it? What are you trying to say? No sound came, only silence. But Sophie thought she saw one word forming. Help. Her heart raced. She whispered back, I'll help you, Eliza. I promise. The ghost flickered and then faded again, leaving only the cold air behind. That evening, Sophie filled her notebook with notes. Her name is Eliza Hartwell. She loved music. She died young. She cannot speak, but she asked for help. There are secrets about her life. Sophie tapped her pencil on the paper. How could she help Eliza? What secret was she hiding? She decided she would return to the library. She would search for more. She would find the truth. Because Eliza wasn't just a ghost. She was a girl who had once been alive, a girl who had suffered, and who still needed someone to listen. And Sophie was ready to be that someone. The night was dark and heavy. Clouds covered the moon, and the wind howled through the trees. The old house on the hill looked more mysterious than ever, standing tall against the stormy sky. But Sophie was not afraid. She was determined. She knew this was the night she would finally learn the truth. She carried her flashlight, her notebook, and the music box. Whiskers followed her, tail low, ears alert. As she walked through the tall grass, Sophie whispered, "Eliza, I'm coming. Tonight, I'll help you." The front door groaned loudly as Sophie pushed it open. The air inside was colder than usual, almost icy. The floorboards creaked under her feet. She climbed the stairs, her flashlight trembling in her hand. At the top of the hallway, she stopped. The atmosphere was different, heavier, full of pressure, as if the house itself was holding its breath. "Eliza?" Sophie whispered. "I'm here." The ghost appeared immediately. She did not flicker gently like before. This time her shadowy form was sharp and strong, her face clearer, her eyes full of pain. Sophie gasped softly, "You're stronger tonight." "Why?" The ghost raised one hand, pointing toward the floor. Sophie frowned. "The floor?" She stepped forward and looked carefully. Her flashlight revealed a small crack in the wooden boards. Her heart skipped a beat. "Something is hidden here." With careful hands, Sophie pressed against the boards. One of them moved slightly. She pulled, and the old wood lifted up with a squeak. Underneath was a small wooden box, dusty and forgotten. Her hand shook as she lifted it out. She placed it on the floor and opened it slowly. Inside were letters, old, yellow, tied with a faded ribbon. Sophie untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. The handwriting was elegant but shaky. "Dearest Eliza, I know they do not approve of us, but I cannot stop loving you. One day, we will be free." Sophie's eyes widened. A secret love, that must have been the truth Eliza wanted to share. She read another letter, "Your father forbids me from seeing you. He says I am not good enough. But I swear, Eliza, my heart belongs only to you. If we cannot be together in this life, then I shall wait for you beyond it." Sophie gasped. The letters were from someone Eliza had loved. Someone her family had not accepted. She looked up at the ghost. Eliza's eyes were full of tears, her body trembling with silent emotion. Eliza's silent cry. Sophie stood and whispered, "This is your secret. You loved someone, but your family wouldn't let you be together. That's why you're sad." The ghost's mouth opened. Her silent cry filled the room like a wave of sorrow. The walls shook, and the window rattled violently. Whiskers hissed and pressed against Sophie's legs. But Sophie did not run. She took a step forward and held the letters high. "It's okay, Eliza. I know your story now. You don't have to hide anymore. You loved someone, and your love was real. It doesn't matter what your family thought. Your story won't be forgotten." The ghost shimmered, flickering between shadow and pale human form. Her face became clearer, a young woman with long hair and eyes full of pain. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Sophie whispered again, voice shaking, "Love is not shameful. You don't need to stay trapped by sadness. I will remember your love. I will carry your secret. You are not alone." Suddenly, the ghost screamed, not with sound, but with energy. The room grew colder than ice. The curtains blew violently, though the window was closed. The letters flew from Sophie's hands, swirling in the air like birds. Sophie covered her face with her arm, but she did not back away. She shouted into the storm, "Eliza! You don't have to suffer anymore. Let go of the pain. Let go of the silence. I am here with you." The ghost's form shook, torn between rage and sorrow. Her mouth opened wide, but no sound came. Her hands reached out desperately, almost touching Sophie. Sophie dropped her arm and stepped forward, her eyes full of courage. She held her hand out to the ghost. "It's okay," Sophie whispered through the storm. "You can rest. You can be free." For the first time, something happened. A sound, very faint, very broken, escaped the ghost's lips. It was not a word, but a soft cry, a whisper of a voice long lost. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. You spoke, you really spoke. The ghost trembled, her form flickering brightly, almost like light. Her face was clearer than ever before, young, beautiful, but full of sorrow. Sophie whispered one final promise, I'll tell the world your story. You'll never be forgotten. The ghost's expression softened. Her trembling slowed. The storm in the room began to calm. The letters fell gently to the floor. The window stopped rattling. The air grew still again. Eliza looked at Sophie one last time. Her lips formed silent words, thank you. And then she faded into the darkness, leaving only the cold air and the soft tune of the music box behind. Sophie knelt on the floor, the letters around her. Her hands shook, but her heart felt steady. She whispered, I did it. I found the truth. She loved someone, and they didn't let her be happy. That's why she stayed here. But now she can rest. Whiskers rubbed against her leg, purring softly. Sophie gathered the letters and placed them back in the box. She knew they were precious. She would protect them. As she stood by the window, looking out at the stormy night, Sophie whispered, your story will live on, Eliza. I promise. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sky was soft and blue, and sunlight touched the old house gently, as if it, too, was tired after the long night. Sophie woke up with the box of letters beside her bed. She had brought them home the night before, too shaken to leave them in the dark house. For a long moment, she just sat in silence. Whiskers stretched beside her, yawning and curling into a ball. The world felt peaceful, but Sophie's heart was still heavy. Eliza, she whispered, are you really free now? Later that afternoon, Sophie returned to the old house one last time. The air no longer felt icy. The hallway seemed less heavy, less full of sadness. She walked up the stairs slowly. Her footsteps echoed, but the house did not groan in anger. Instead, it felt calm. At the end of the hallway, she opened the door to the music room. The piano sat quietly in the corner, covered in dust. The curtains hung still. The silence was different now, it was peaceful, not sorrowful. Sophie placed the wooden box of letters on the piano. She whispered softly, this is where they belong. Your voice, your love, your secret, it's safe now. The room grew a little brighter. A gentle glow shimmered in the air, and slowly, the ghost appeared once more. Eliza looked softer now, almost transparent. Her eyes were calm, not full of pain. Sophie smiled, though her own eyes filled with tears. Hello, Eliza. I wasn't sure if I would see you again. The ghost tilted her head, as if listening. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Sophie stepped closer. I kept my promise. I'll remember your story. And I'll tell it to others. You don't have to worry anymore. Eliza's form flickered gently. For the first time, Sophie felt warmth, not cold, in the ghost's presence. It was like standing in a soft ray of sunlight. The ghost raised her hand as if to touch Sophie's cheek. Her fingers stopped just before reaching, fading into the air. Then, very faintly, Sophie heard it. A whisper, fragile as the wind, thank you. And with that, Eliza's spirit dissolved into light. The glow faded slowly until the room was empty again. But it no longer felt haunted. It felt safe, gentle, and at rest. Sophie stood quietly for a long time. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she was smiling. Goodbye, Eliza, she whispered. Be free. Whiskers meowed softly from the doorway, as if agreeing. From that day on, Sophie often thought about Eliza. She told her parents, her friends, and even her teacher about the story of the young woman who had loved deeply but had been silenced by her family. Sometimes, when Sophie played her own little music box at night, she imagined Eliza listening with a peaceful smile. The house on the hill remained quiet. No one else reported seeing a ghost. But Sophie knew the truth, Eliza was finally at rest. One evening, as Sophie sat by her window, she whispered to herself, love is never wrong. No matter what people say, no matter what rules they make, real love is always true. She held Whiskers in her lap and looked up at the stars. Somewhere, she believed, Eliza's spirit was free, shining among them. And Sophie felt stronger, wiser, and braver than before. Because she had not only faced a ghost. She had learned the power of remembering, of compassion, and of love. Thank you for listening to this story, A Little Girl and a Ghost. This story was written in clear and slow English to help you improve your listening, vocabulary, and comprehension in a natural way. Remember, you can listen many times. Each time, you will understand more and learn new words. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more long English stories. Your journey with English can be emotional, exciting, and fun. Keep listening, keep practicing, and keep learning every day. See you in the next story.